Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Pullbuoy podcast. Steve here, welcome you into 2022. We hope to have the gang back together for this episode. Unfortunately, Katie is ill, so she's not here, but I'm delighted to welcome back Bob Ballard. It's been a long time, Bob, and it's great to have you back.
Steve, it's good to be back. It does seem like a long time, doesn't it?
Yeah, it's a long time since we were talking Olympics and things last summer, but we're here to talk principally about the British Championships and trials that just took place in Sheffield. And before we dive into what happened in the pool, it was great to see a proper competition back happening with crowds and all the kids there and everything. It was good to see, wasn't it?
Yeah, great to get back to some semblance of normality after all this time. And although I wasn't there, like you, I was watching on the stream, and the noise came across, the atmosphere came across, the camaraderie came across, all those kind of things that haven't been able to be happening in the last couple of years, all back in situ. Hopefully that's the way we're going forward. And I think it inspired a lot of people. I think a lot of people did swims better than they probably thought they were going to do that week, just because they were back in a normal atmosphere again.
Well, that competition was the trials for what is going to be a very, very busy summer of competition for Britain's swimmers, and something we've not seen before. Obviously, there's a World Championships coming up in Budapest in June that was that reconfigured from Fukuoka in May. Then I've been working these numbers out, Bob. So. The swimming finishes there on the 25th of June. Then there's a 33-day gap before the Commonwealth Games starts on the 29th of July. It runs for 6 days. And then there's a 7-day gap from there to the start of the European Championships in Rome. So for someone like Adam Peaty, we'd assume he'll swim the final of the medley relay on the last day of the Commonwealths, and then the heats of the 100 breaststroke a week later in Rome. So it's going to be a pretty hectic summer coming up for them.
Yeah, but in a way, I know it's short course, so it's very different, is the likes of Adam Peaty, though he didn't do the ISL last time round. Maybe the ISL has prepared quite a few of these swimmers now for back-to-back races and back-to-back competition. Remember, the ISL was very full-on, week in, week out. Hardly any gap, hardly any break for them. So whilst it is very intense, and obviously the standard is incredibly high at all those championships, I think maybe the ISL's helped people in terms of preparation where you don't get massive downtimes, you don't get time for a full taper, you don't get time to re-prepare the way that you used to. You just have to race sometimes, in that kind of shape. And also take into account the last couple of days, the World Juniors has been confirmed in Peru at the beginning of September now. So we've got that to add to the calendar. So the youngsters will have the World Juniors in Peru in September. So add that to the mix.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see what British swimming do about a team for that one. But your point about the ISL, I think, is a good one. I mean, 2014 was the last time something vaguely similar happened, when the Glasgow Commonwealth Games ran almost straight into the Berlin European Championships, although they had about a 3-week gap for those ones. But Britain did really well at Euros, coming off a really strong Commonwealth. So hopefully we will see
2002, as indeed you probably do, where we couldn't be at the Europeans because they clashed directly with the Commonwealth Games.
Yeah. So there was no option for them to swim both. So but I think the Euros team they'll pick after the Commonwealth Games, or finalise after the Commonwealth Games. So it'll be interesting to see who fancies another crack and who actually goes through all three. I think Adam has said he wants to do all three, and I'm sure there will be plenty of others that do. So we'll follow that with interest. But first, the World Championships came up, the trials in Sheffield as part of that British Championships, and the team announced a bit earlier today. In terms of the swimming, obviously a couple of standouts to pick up on. Firstly, I think Lewis Burris, he was a really great breakout, I think, in that competition. The only person not pre-selected who actually added an individual swim for Worlds, and really impressive in the 100 free, particularly Bob, and the 50 where he beat Ben Proud for the first time domestically, I think, in 8 years.
Yeah, absolutely impressive, and also very impressive in what he said afterwards as well. He paid tribute to all the people who got him to the position physically and mentally that he's in right now, including Zoe Baker, who sadly we lose to Australia now. I'm just hoping we're not going to go down the route of our diving setup where we've lost 3 diving coaches to Australia in the last 6 years. So I hope that's not going to be a trend that's carried on. Zoe is a maverick. Some of her methods maybe don't go down particularly well with British swimming for various reasons, but she's done a great job with Lewis in the very short. She's had him for about a year, I think, something like that.
That's right.
And look at the immense strides that he has made in that time. And, he's going to go down to Australia, I think, with her, which is going to make his year rather complicated if you think about it, because he's spending most of his time in Europe, as indeed she'll have to for part of it anyway with him, I imagine. Although I'm not sure what will happen with that. She's not on, obviously, the team for the Worlds. Will she get to the Commonwealth Games? I don't know. It's all up in the air. But Lewis is obviously a very important swimmer for us going forward, because at the times he's clocking. If he's beating somebody like Ben Proud, then he's in cracking form and probably will do something quite special this summer.
Well, that's right. And he second British man to break 48 seconds in the 100. A few years ago, 2019, he went 48.6, I think, to win the B final at the US Nationals when we first kind of really caught sight of him, although he'd actually won the British Championship, I think, in 2018 over 100 free, when it was a bit of a strange year again with Commonwealths and Europeans. So he's been on the radar for a little while.
Yeah, what about that relay now? That 4x1 relay. I mean, it's not so long ago when you and I and Katie were talking about our 4x1 team. So, yeah, we've got a couple of decent ones, but we can't find a quartet. And all of a sudden now, we've got so many better than decent 100 freestylers that we're now in the mix for certainly making finals and knocking on the door of medals as well, which wouldn't have been the case 5 to 6 years ago.
Well, Bob, you and I can remember when we couldn't get a man under 50 seconds for love nor money. So,
right. Took a long time,
to have not have Duncan swim that race at trials and then have a victory in a 47 point, Tom Dean PB in a 48 flat. Jacob Whittle is still only 17 and swimming 48.2. It's just crazy when you throw in James Guy, our old relay stalwart, who consistently splits 47 point in that relay, even though it's not his prime event. It's very, very exciting to see what they'll do this summer.
Yeah, 4x1, 4x2. All right, the 4x2 is stronger in depth, but nonetheless, 4x1 are a definite medals prospect certainly for the Europeans, and you say for the Worlds as well.
Yeah, indeed. Now, while you mentioned the 4x2, let's talk about them now, because that race threw up another great domestic tussle, as it always does. Duncan got one over on Tom Dean this time, but they were fighting it out right to the end.
What a tremendous race that was. And I've got to say, all credit to James Guy for setting it up as well. Because James really set the pace in that race and set the tempo and decided, right, this is the only way I'm going to beat those two, so I'm going to go for it, which I think had a big impact on how the race was swum and how the race was won ultimately by Duncan as well. And I mentioned on Twitter the other day, not to be overlooked, Joe Litchfield coming in fourth in that. And there were some others obviously on the team, and in fact in that final, who'd been part of the 4x2 team last year in either the heats or the final. So Joe's kind of now edging his way into consideration for the 4x2. So again, another name to add to the list of people who are in consideration for that 4x2. That's going to be quite a bit of a scrap. If we take on board that probably the top 3 I mentioned there will get in, that 4th spot is not a definite shoe-in for anybody right now.
No, well, the 4 from the Olympic finals, so Tom, Duncan and Matt Richards were pre-selected, so they're in. And then, as you say, Joe has gotten the nod as part of the team selection, presumably off the back of that 200 free performance where he came home 4th. So I think we can expect to see him swim that in the heats, at least at Worlds, and see what happens. But
after what Matt did last year in the final in Tokyo, you can't deny him his place. But a lot happens in the space of a year, doesn't it? People who are in the best of form in 2022, things can change in 2021 to 22 quite rapidly. Matt probably didn't think, I'm sure he swam his best in that final the other day, and Joe took his chance, but it's amazing just how much depth we've got. That final was just wall to wall strong in every single lane.
It certainly was, and I rather think that if everything goes to plan, they fancy having another crack at that world record in Budapest.
Should get it this time. Yeah,
they'll be there or thereabouts, you would think, wouldn't you? So fingers crossed for that one. But really strong looking squad off the back of that 200 free final. But Duncan was swimming fast everywhere. You know, he's one of those swimmers who swims fast all the time. But he did it in an event we perhaps weren't expecting this time, Bob. I mean, we've seen him swim 400 IM short course for London Roar in the ISL, and he's very good at it there, but he thought he'd have a crack long course. I know I was watching it thinking, you know, he'll probably break the Scottish record, Dan Wallace's Scottish record, but he went and broke the British record. So he took Matt Litchfield's British record 4:09.1, which is a ludicrous time for someone who can also swim 47 point for 100 free. It's just ridiculous.
He is. I mean, I've said on this podcast before, and I'll say it again today, the greatest all-round swimmer we have ever produced, male or female. Because is there anything he can't do? He does, you know, I'm sure there is. He probably won't want to do a 1500 free, for example, or indeed open water. But or something like everything that he sets his mind to, which might be a challenge, he achieves. Interesting to hear what Amy Wilmot was saying in the commentary, that she wishes that Duncan did the 400 IM much more regularly. And it's something that I've been saying for ages, that, you know, you just look, he doesn't have any deficiency. Every stroke is pretty much even. All right, his breaststroke maybe not quite as good as his other strokes, but there's not much in it, to be honest. And you always would look at Duncan in any race, any competitive race he's in, and think he's always in with a chance, as he proved at the Olympics last year and has proved at World Championships and Europeans, and he'll show at the Commies again this year, I know. You know, you just think you put, not your mortgage, you certainly put a considerable backing on Duncan doing the job every time, because he's just one of those swimmers you know will perform. And that's what I liked about the trials, that he didn't have to do that in the events he's pre-selected for, but he did, because he wanted to show and he wanted to prove. And I think coming second at the Olympics really hurt him in the 200 free. Yeah, he was only slightly edged out. It was a very, very tight race, and he would think, oh, come on, silver, silver, silver. All right, he got the relay gold, which is fantastic, but he wants that individual gold, and he has that quest, he has that thirst to get that individual gold at the Worlds this year, and I think he'll get it. I really do.
Well, he's certainly going with the right form to do that. I mean, I talked about the 409 and the 47.8, and I asked the question on Twitter, how many people have got that in their locker? And the answer is precisely 2, Duncan and a certain Michael Phelps. So well, he's in exalted company.
Swimming anymore, so we don't have to worry about Phelps making a comeback. I don't think we do anyway. You never know that things can happen. And of course, he said he wouldn't come back for Rio, and did, and that kind of stuff. But
I think we can count him out now, Bob.
I think we can. So Duncan is the new Michael Phelps, which is, and I'm not sure he would never accept that, but I think we can look at him as our Michael Phelps at least.
I think that's a good description. That's a good description. He's the first Duncan Scott and not the new Michael Phelps. Let's say that.
That's not bad.
But he was also equally impressive in his 200 IM, 156.08, I think. Or certainly there or thereabouts, but he was chased hard by Tom Dean. So that was another interesting little quirk, that Tom's maybe taking the 200 IM a bit more seriously again. I mean, he won European Juniors, Commonwealth Youth Games in the 200 IM, so he's got pedigree there, and it'd be interesting to see what he does if he does get to swim that at Worlds. And
bear in mind the very difficult time he's had since the Olympics. He's not had anywhere near the kind of meterage. He's not had anywhere near the preparation for the trials he would have had in a normal year. So now he's back in the groove, and now he's getting himself back towards the kind of peak performance we now expect from Tom Dean. I think the world is his oyster again. So I think that's only a smidgen, a little indication what Tom Dean is capable of this summer. And I think, yeah, you're right. If he I mean, he's great at 400 free as well, isn't he? We could desperately do with a 400 free swimmer as well right now. But he can't do everything. He's not Hannah Miley. So he's not going to do every single event that's on the program. But again, it's almost like Duncan in that respect, right? 400 free, he's good at that. 200 free, he's really good at that. 200 IM, he's really good at that. And you just think, it's so difficult. If you're a swimmer who has that pedigree and has that depth and that range, what do you do? It's a crapshoot to try and decide exactly. And you have to look, obviously, sometimes how the program looks as to what you can fit in. But I'd like to see Tom in the 400 free, because I think as a 400 free styler, he's got medal prospects there as well. But it's just the amount of effort he has to put in, which probably doesn't suit him particularly.
No, I think maybe he's, given his 100 free in Sheffield, maybe he's erring more towards the slightly shorter stuff. But we'll see. I mean, I think your point about his preparation is valid. He, like a lot of people, took time off after Tokyo. I think he had 9 weeks out of the water, I think he told us. So, that to be back at, top speed, doing best times in the 100 there, and, and the 200 IM and not far off his best in the 200 free is really, really encouraging.
And also, I hate to see him so far off in the ISL too. You look at him going, this is not Tom Dean. It wasn't him, was it at all? It's like he'd gone in there because he had commitments to do it and just didn't look anything like himself there.
He turned it around, though, really quickly through that season. That was really impressive, for us. And it's obviously he's kept building that through the Christmas period in this first part of this year. So, looking good for him coming into this year. And on the subject of people having had time off, Katie has made the point to me. She thought that Adam was actually, PT, of course, was actually really very impressive, given that he'd had 6 months off. We know he was doing Strictly Come Dancing for most of the second part of last year and didn't get back in the water until Christmas time-ish. So 58.5 is pretty decent off that, curtailed preparation.
Well, quite, and nobody's going to come close to that, or very few people will get close to that in the world right now. And they know, looking at that time in April, that he's only going to get faster and faster as the summer goes on. So people go, okay, so maybe slightly off his best. Yeah, slightly off his best in April, where he's had basically no preparation and certainly not the backup that he would have loved at this stage. Once he gets back in there and really gets his race head on, and there's something really untoward happens or something comes out of left field we're not expecting, then this is Adam Peaty again dominating in 2022.
I think, I think he's good enough that he can still win Worlds, definitely. I think if he is going to be vulnerable, this is the year 50. That he will be.
Yeah, and 50 as well, maybe.
But, we shouldn't, he's not going to swim 56.8 at Worlds, but, you think he's got enough to defend that title, but it's going to be exciting.
Also interesting from his point of view, and interesting also for other swimmers' point of view, with the home Commonwealth Games, where's your priority? Which one are you peaking for most then?
Well, it's a choice, isn't it? I'm sure he'll want to win all three.
Oh, yeah, so, he will, but there'll be other swimmers who are going to go, right, well, I've got to work out my workload now. As you said, they will come fairly close together, and you've got to get a taper in somewhere, at least a mini taper of some description. So what do you look at? You go, right, it's home Commonwealth Games, which means it's important, very important, more than it would be normally. So I want to perform well in front of my home crowd. Of course I do, because most of these swimmers, in fact, all of these swimmers didn't get a chance to swim in 2012. So this is their first home meet, isn't it?
Yeah. So, I guess people's, those who haven't gone to Worlds will obviously be looking to swim both of the second two, and those who go to Worlds maybe will skip Europeans. But, yes, it's going to be an interesting kind of balancing out for everybody, isn't it, going through this summer? But I think Adam's got enough. He'll have some tough competition, Kaminga and Martin Engi, particularly, who will face twice if he goes to Euros. And they might fancy a go at him this year, but he's certainly shown that he's well on his way back to his best. So
yeah, and also worth for James Wilby as well, because I thought James looked very good in Sheffield as well.
He did, yeah, he did. I mean, he's another one. He's he'd be number one in most countries in the world, wouldn't he? Let's be honest. So having Adam, maybe puts him in the shade a little bit, but yeah, he looked very impressive, particularly in the 200. I thought so. Hopefully he'll have a good summer at Worlds as well. So we've been speaking, for so far, and we've only really talked about the men's competition. For the women, Katie has pointed out she thought that Anna Hopkins 100 was brilliant. She thought that was by far and away the best women's swim of the competition. Down at 53 low for 100 free, and I tended to agree with her. I thought Anna would look really, really good.
What a wonderfully paced race it was too, wasn't it? The way she basically killed off the opposition by about 30 metres, to be honest. You looked and went, hang on a second, is she on rocket fuel today or something? Because she went so quick. We know how good she is over 50 anyway, but she paced that race absolutely perfectly. Obviously, the time she would have wanted a little bit quicker. But in terms of her race preparation for the events still to come this year, I thought that 100 free was about as good as it could be at this stage.
Yeah, really, really impressive for April, and good for her to set herself up for the rest of the year. In terms of the team that's been picked, there are a couple of new names on the women's side that have got the nod to go to Budapest. Freya Colbert was very impressive. I thought 400 free,
very impressive.
And again, the 200 free as well. So she's added another person to that pot for the women's 4x2, which has always been there or thereabouts.
They found another 400 freestyler from Nova, eh? Another Nova Centurion 400 freestyler.
Who have they produced before? I don't know who you.
Oh well, I'm trying to think. There was somebody, but her name escapes my mind for the time being. But yeah, obviously they're doing some good things in Nova with that, which is great to see, because we have a paucity at the moment of people at 400 and above. And it's an area that I know that Kerr is looking at very attentively right now. They've got the right man on the case for that. And it's great to see somebody break through, because, normally you get a legacy from an event, don't you? Like the 400 or the 800, like we had with Becky, and then with Jazz, and obviously Joe Jackson and people like that. And then we've hit a bit of a kind of a very fallow period now, where we don't have anybody. All right, Holly was doing some decent times, but isn't quite on that radar at the moment. So for Freya to break through the way that she has done here, and I think she also surprised herself. I think she said in the quote I saw that she's really surprised herself that she's achieved what she has this year so quickly.
Rather like you were saying, she's come into this and just done much better than she was expecting. That was precisely what she said, wasn't it? And that's earned her ticket to Budapest, which is well deserved, I think. And I think it'd be interesting to see whether she gets a nod to have a go in the 400 IM as well, because she was looking fairly decent there as well. I think 441.
It's a lot to ask of her on her first international year, though, senior international year, for her to take on all of that stuff. She's young enough that she can build into that and look maybe towards Paris in 2024. But I think I'd like her to concentrate on the two main events there, get those done, and then go, right, crack that, can move on to something else. I wouldn't like the 400 IM, which is such a hard event for her, in addition to the other two, to impede the other two.
Maybe one for Commonwealth then, for the 400 IM.
Why not?
We'll see. Yeah. Okay. The other new name was Medi Harris, Welsh backstroker, but who was also pretty impressive in the freestyle events as well. She was in that mix for the 4x2 free. She won the 100 back. Wasn't quite on her best time, because she's already set Welsh records this year twice, I think, to break Georgia Davies' Welsh record for 100 back, which was taken down to sort of 59.2. She was a little bit off that, but she's good enough to win, and she's got the nod, probably for the relays, cover for Kathleen, who's been suffering with a disc in her back, we found out, for the medley relay, and also for the 4x2. We hope maybe Britain will actually get to swim that this time. So, it's nice to have some new blood, some new names coming along and putting pressure on the established kind of order as well,
absolutely.
Isn't it?
And I'll tell you what really impressed me with Medi was how nerveless she looked. She was in really good company with people who've done great things on the world stage, got Olympic medalists and Olympic gold medalists around her and people like that. And you're thinking, you should be in awe of these people. But she wasn't. She went in there, swam her own race, was very, very determined and single-minded in what she did. And I thought, that some people have a bit of an aura about them. And I thought she had that last week from what I saw from the stuff that we saw from Sheffield. I thought, you look like you belong. You look like you're not going to look out of place when you get to the Commonwealth Games representing Wales, when you're on the World Championship team. I think you're the kind of person who will raise their game and feel like you belong, not looking around going, oh my God, that's so-and-so, oh my God, that's so-and-so, which has often happened with British swimmers over the year. They get slightly overawed by more established names and high-profile names. I thought she had the kind of look of someone going, I can beat you, and I'm going to go and beat you. And that's what she did.
Yeah, great to see. Great to see people stepping up like that. So we'll look forward to seeing how she and Freya get on in Budapest in a couple of months. Let's take a quick look round the sort of more Commonwealth Games focused selections and qualifications. If we're looking at the England team, there were two that leapt out at me. One I know you'll be very happy to see was Jay Elliott making the 200 fly consideration time after his disappointment and narrow missing out last year for the Olympics.
Yeah, absolutely thrilled for Jay. I'm sure his story will come out at some point about all his trials and tribulations out of the pool. But, he's... When we first saw him, he was a 1500 freestyler, wasn't he? That's how we got to know Jay first, when he was doing low 15 minutes. In the 1500 freestyle. He's changed his game plan totally now. Obviously, still does the 200 occasionally, and will do 200 back and 200 fly. But that's all credit to him and to the coaching team at Sheffield as well, who know he's a talent. He's a great talent. He's a very versatile swimmer, and I think it's been a lot with bit of self-belief. He's had a lot of injuries, a lot of shoulder injuries and stuff like that, which have set him back. But I think he's about as fit as he's been. He's certainly as motivated as he's ever been. And on that England team, he will not let anybody down.
So he'll be good to watch for Birmingham. Another older name, if you like, that also put himself in the frame for that Birmingham qualification was Adam Barrett. He retired after, I think, Olympic trials in 2016. He was still swimming, masters and what have you, and then got picked up by the ISL with his old coach James Gibson last year, and now potentially finds himself on the England team for Birmingham for the 50 fly. So that's
what a story!
Great comeback.
He basically, to all intents and purposes, he'd given up a year ago, and then he rang Kerr Brooks at Wickham and said, "Look, I'm thinking about making a comeback." And I think Kev quite honestly said to him, well, look, you know what this entails. You know the work you've got to put in. I don't want you to be a kind of a make weight here. I don't want you to kind of just boosting the numbers if you're not going to put the effort in. He put the effort in. He's got the times. He's got the time that he needs for the Commonwealth Games. Whether he gets selected or not, again, it could well be they'll look at it and go, well, we're looking at youth, we're looking at new people coming in, we're not looking at somebody who's kind of left the sport and come back into the sport, but he deserves his place. He's achieved that. I think he'll be thinking about ISL next year. Now he's back in the groove and now feels like he belongs back in swimming again. ISL next year, I think it would have been really good for him had he had an ISL this year. I think that's a bit of the downside from his point of view, that there is no ISL this year, but provided it goes ahead next year, I can see him definitely being sought after for that, and let's hope he makes it, because he deserves it. Again, he's had to put so much effort in from a standing start, in effect, to come back in to post world-class times with only really, 10, 11, 12 months behind him. With obviously a big break in between. I think it's a great credit to him. I think just on the basis of that, he should be given a look in.
Yeah, and I think it's a positive for the ISL that it's given people like him and Jay, in fact, to some extent, an ability to come back to the sport or to stay in the sport, that bit longer and prolong their careers. So, a really good side effect of that coming in. From the Scottish point of view, something I really liked seeing, it was in the 100 breaststroke first day or the second day in the heats. when Craig Benson, Ross Murdoch, and Archie Goodburn were all next to each other in the same heat and all swam the Commonwealth consideration standard for Scotland. So that was really nice to see.
Life of the old dog, yes, I think is the message I sent Ross Murdoch after that, because he's always there or thereabouts, isn't he? He's a solid performer, makes Olympics, makes Commonwealth Games, makes Worlds, makes Europeans. Everybody will always remember that swim in Glasgow, won't they? Where he beat Michael Jameson. But, Ross is still hanging in there. He's still obviously believing do it, or else he wouldn't be doing it. He's that kind of swimmer that if he really started to tail off and fell away, he wouldn't be doing it. So he obviously feels that he's got certainly another Commonwealth Games in him this year, and he will have. Yeah,
and I thought good for Craig, actually, because we first saw him as a teenager in the London 2012 team. He's probably, one of the... Well, there's not many left from that team, and he's still going.
Yeah.
But he's actually kind of, on his way out of his elite, inverted commas, swimming career. He's working alongside his swimming at Glasgow with Ian Wright, who's just been appointed as the new
congratulations.
The new Scottish head coach for later this year. And he's come out and done something not far off his best to put himself in that selection frame. So really great for Craig. And obviously Archie doing likewise. So well done to those three. The question mark, not question mark, but the question I think for me in the Scottish team also they missed out on the world's selection. I thought maybe they might have got the nod as a sort of development option, but pushed back into the Scotland mix and maybe the Euros, as we've talked about, was Kiana McInnes and Katie Shanahan. They had breakthrough years last year in terms of getting their senior international debuts, and Katie in particular went on, did really well at European Juniors, was great for London Roar in the ISL. So important for them to kind of back up those initial steps, and show us they belong this year.
Yeah, and again, it's progress, isn't it? Working our way through, playing a chance to shine this year, Commonwealth in particular, and hopefully Europeans as well. So yeah, it's a big year for the Welsh, a big year for the Scots, because they love these kind of events. The English do too, but Scots love the opportunity to represent their country in an individual event, and I think we'll see them definitely step up to the plate because of that.
All right, then let's start to wrap things up. Then, what you've seen the World Championship team. We've talked about a lot of the people on that, a lot of the new names. What did you make of it? I mean,
I think it's a massively strong team. Oh, I think it's a massively strong team. You look through that and you think everybody on that list should make a final. I really believe that. I think everybody on that list is a finalist in their main event. So I think it's a relatively small team, isn't it? It's not a huge team compared to the Olympics, for example. But I think that's pretty much the strongest team we could have sent to the World Championships. I'm very excited by that because I think there's a lot of medal potential there. Take aside Adam, Tom, Duncan, the depth in that we'll see what Lewis can do because he's got on that team. So let's see what he can do. But I actually think person for person, women and men on that team is incredibly strong team. I think that's one of the strongest teams we've ever sent to a World Championships.
It does look strong, doesn't it, on paper? And I think, like you, I think they've got it about right in terms of selections. I think there's one or two, maybe you can consider themselves a little bit unlucky. Maybe, I know British swimming don't pick 50s, but maybe Imogen Clark is a little bit unlucky not to get a go. But I'm going to...
But in a year like this where you got other chances, it's not like it's a one-off thing.
No,
it might be, if you got Europeans, you got Commonwealths, everybody's going to get at least one swim, probably two events this year. So, Worlds kind of been a late add-on, if you like, to a certain extent. There's always Worlds next year, of course. There's Worlds 12 months later. So I think it's one of those years where you go, okay, well, I missed out on that one, but I've got two other opportunities. So I don't think people are going to be that... peeved or upset by not making world team this year.
I think that's probably fair. I am going to pick up Chris Spice on something he said there in the announcement, where he said it was exciting for the selectors to be able to select so many young up and coming athletes when out of the 23, 20 of them went to the Olympics last year. I think so.
There's not that many breakthroughs. Yeah, there's not that many.
No, breakthroughs. Three. I mean, come on, Chris. It's a good team, but let's not go overboard. So there we are. Good. Well, we will very much look forward to seeing what what that team can do in Budapest. It's been great chewing the fat with you, Bob, after all this time. So thank you very much.
Pleasure.
We'll be back in some way, shape or form, I'm sure, before Worlds to look forward to what's going to happen in Budapest. I've been working on some other stuff which will appear in between as well. So keep your eyes on Twitter and on Pullbuoy for that. In the meantime, if you want to get in contact, it's at Pullbuoy on Twitter or at Pullbuoy UK on Facebook and Instagram, or you can go to pullbuoy.co.uk/contact if you want to send me an email. In the meantime, we hope to have Katie back with us soon. Hope she gets better. But thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Pullbuoy podcast. For more episodes, visit www.pullbuoy.co.uk/podcast.